because there's a lot at stake in November, more than many Americans realize. A third of the Senate, of course, up for re-election. So even if Republicans get their way in the White House, it's possible that the Senate could flip and go blue. If President Trump wins re-election himself, but the Senate turns Democrat, could Congress impeach him again? Here to weigh in, our A-plus panel for the day, former advisor to Margaret Thatcher and President Trump, John Brown, and president of Walser Wealth Management, Rebecca Walser. So, John, that would be an ugly scenario, wouldn't it? For the president, at least.
Yes, very, because the Senate was designed by our forefathers to be a most important brake on mob rule. And The Economist forecasts now that there's a 67% chance that the Democrats will get a 51 to 49 seat majority in the Senate. But that is based on the Economist's political forecasting record, which is not all that great. Wildly wrong on Brexit, wildly wrong on Johnson's victory in the British elections in December. So that's not great. But we've got a problem in that the basic people has a massive media bias, very loud and pro-Democrat. The pandemic has eroded the key influence of the superb economy into more pandemic area. And the Democratic infusion of violence into grassroots politics is making the Republicans quiet or shy, I think it's called. Yeah. And therefore the polls are vulnerable. And I really don't place any reliability in that poll at all. But it will be a very tough struggle.
Okay, Rebecca, it's not beyond conception that they do take the Senate, and that means Schumer, most likely, is heading up the Senate, Pelosi heading up the House. And what would that scenario be for the president?
Well, not good, I don't think. There is no set of economic circumstances that I can see where a Biden presidency is what is warranted for this country economically after the coronavirus shutdown. And what's really disturbing is you have different scientific data that shows that, look at Sweden, perfect example, never locked down, never had face mask mandates, and their death count is low and literally almost non-existent. So what bothers me immensely is that we had this Democratic push, if you will, to completely close down our economy. At first, President Trump was on board. At first, we didn't know the impact, and he said, okay, 2 weeks to flatten the curve. 2 weeks to flatten the curve has become 6 months of hodgepodge closures across the country that have affected the economy. And now what you see is the Democrats coming back around and trying to tie the economic results of coronavirus shutdowns and blame President Trump for it. Not only is he responsible for 200,000 deaths individually, it's his fault. Right. But now he's also at fault for the economy being in the situation that it's in. Yeah. And so I'm sorry, but I call what on that.
Yeah. Rob, she was mentioning what's gone on in Sweden, and we know that they've gone on with their economy. Now, they have had a higher incidence of death according to the number of cases, but they didn't shut down their whole economy, Rob.
Right. And, the question is that if you put this on a long enough scale, if we don't get the vaccine tomorrow, which we're not going to, right. What ends up being the actual death tolls in all these countries when you compare them? Of course, Sweden picked up real high
especially to the population.
But they didn't destroy their economy, and if it ends up that all the other countries, Scandinavian countries, end up with the same death toll, you really start to wonder why did everybody do it the way they did. Going back to what we were talking about as far as the Senate flipping over, it's hard to imagine a situation where I guess the Senate does flip without Donald Trump being ousted from office.
Except you've got popular vote versus electoral college. So it's possible there could be a blue wave, if you will, but it's not an electoral college one.
And that is true. I think the idea of all of those Senate committees now being run by Democrats.
Just imagine.
and Schumer and Pelosi, like you said, it would be a nightmare for the president. I think it would be 4 years of just roadblocks, getting nothing done, and investigations. It would just be a horrible.
John, tell us your assessment. You have a lot of experience in the UK and here in the United States. Is the U.S. handling this whole thing, COVID-19, well?
I personally think yes, because everyone criticizes the president, but nobody, absolutely nobody, knew what to do, knew anything really about the virus, and the Chinese kept that a secret. I happen to be one of those who believes that it was a deliberately deployed bioweapon. And so you're taken by surprise. Who would go into chemical warfare? What is anything about the virus? Nobody knows. So I think his only mistake was to take what I consider sort of slightly left advice to close the economy. I think that was fatal, because the economy is vital. Even if you accept a certain level of casualties, you cannot stop the army operating. And that's what we did. I think that will prove to be the worst decision in American recent history.
And I think that's one of the concerns that people say, if Biden is elected, we're going to see that again, which there are going to be a lot of people put out of work again if that's what happens. So unfortunately, we're short for time here. John Brown, Rob Schmidt, and Rebecca Walser, thank you so much for joining us. Coming up, we have more